Good morning. It is good to be here with you. We are continuing in our series, Real People, Real Jesus. And one of the greatest ways that we can share the love of Jesus is through the testimony of what he has done in our lives. And today, we are blessed to have a very special woman. If you know her, you know that she is so kind-hearted. She thinks of others in the most creative way. And she just has a beautiful, beautiful testimony of some pretty cool things that God has done and is continuing to do in her story. So we love her dearly at the River Church, and we are thankful to have her share this morning. So please join me in welcoming Patty.
So I'm on? I guess I am on. Good morning.
Good morning, Annie.
So the first thing I want to do is thank some of my friends and family that I asked to be here today. And if you see me making eye contact with you, that's because I need you to send me some strength. Keep me going, okay? So, first thing I want you to know is my life verse, Philippians 4:13. I can do all things through Christ who gives me the strength. Without him, I don't have the strength. I also want you to know that my story is a Jesus story, that he can and he does move in ways that you would not expect. He will never not want you. He will never not love you. I grew up in a family of 10 kids. I was number 8, and I was born in January of 1959. Actually, there were 11 kids. The youngest baby didn't survive her first year, crib death. My house was often loud and chaotic. And I guess it's understandable with so many kids in the house. But sometimes it was also scary. There was yelling, there was fighting every day. There was abuse, every possible kind. I did not trust a variety of the grown-ups that had authority over me. And the only time that I heard the name Jesus in my house, it was a very different context. We were known in Williams Bay as the big, poor family with an angry dad and some mean brothers. We moved to Delavan when I started 3rd grade because our house in the Bay was being razed. That means they had to tear it down on purpose. It was old. The fire department in Williams Bay was having the assistance from some of the firefighters from Chicago. And one of the men in that group that morning was Robert McCarthy, Mike's dad. Mike told me years later that he was sitting in one of those fire trucks that morning watching my house burn down. Unexpected ways. Our house in Delavan was large, huge screened-in front porch, and that became where me and my siblings would camp out. It's where we made pacts to protect each other and to look out for each other, and sometimes to take the blow if they're already hurting. That survival plan grew into what is still today the most amazing friendship with my siblings. I love my siblings. But there was no God, there was no Jesus, there was no church. And the fighting continued, and the chaos continued, and the abuse continued. And in those days, as you've heard before from other stories, it wasn't talked about. Nobody seemed to know what to do about it, so you just sweep it under the rug. As my older brothers and sisters became adult age, or close to it, they moved out. And in my house, eventually, the 4 youngest kids were all that left living there. 2 brothers, myself, and my youngest sister, Kathy. Oh, my youngest sister, Kathy, such dear, great friends. We're so tight friends. We worked at 2 different places at the same time as adults. Couldn't get enough of each other. Our house in Delavan was eventually taken for eminent domain. They were doing the Highway 43 projects. And we moved to a smaller house in Darien the year I started high school. It became quieter, but it was not safer. Time, life moves on. And we all eventually became old enough to move out. Then, on a blind date, set up by my sister Kathy, I met Mike. The date was July 2nd, 1982. July 2nd. He moves in ways you would never expect. I was a single parent with one beautiful 4-year-old daughter, Sarah, and she and Mike and I became a family when we married in 1985. 2 more kids came along, Kyle, Megan. Sarah was later diagnosed with a chronic and serious disease. When she was 13, she spent part of the summer taking care of a few kids for a family that worked at a nearby camp. We were living life. We were happy. We were doing the best we could, but we did not know God. We didn't know Jesus. We didn't have a church. My sister Kathy invited us to come to a church that she and her family had recently started going. And we went, and we started going regularly. And it was about the same time that Sarah came and told me of a terrible thing that had happened to her at that camp. My world crumbled. Our world crumbled. I was haunted with memories of my old junk, and depression hit me hard. I was sinking into a deep, dark hole, mental health issues, and I could not stop it. Married, 3 kids. I could not stop it. My family was hurting and struggling and falling apart. Sarah's health took a rapid decline, and Kyle and Megan were scared and confused. And it was during this time that our marriage also fell apart, and we divorced in 1993. I sunk deeper and deeper, and ultimately, I spent many different times in the hospital. Let me tell you that locked unit at Janesville Mercy kind of became my second home. My family was shattered. I was in and out of the hospital for 2 years. I lived with physical scars from that time, and for a long time they made me feel shame, but they don't anymore. They remind me of how deeply Jesus loves me and my family, and how far he will go to bring us back. I had some serious heavy-duty treatments, and the Lord began to bring me to restoration. I can still remember being in the hospital and truly sensing the hand of Jesus reaching out to me. Just grab on, Patty. I'm right here. You can trust me. And I did. He gave me the very faith I needed to trust him. That was January 1996. I've never been back to that hospital. In March of 1996, just 2 months later, Mike was leaving my place with the kids. We were divorced. And I heard God speak to me. Marry him again, and I will make it work. And for a split second, I thought, maybe I'm not really all better. But it was clear. Marry him again and I will make it work. And I felt the prompt. And I took off down the driveway and I waved Mike down. And I said to him, God told me to marry you again and that it would work. He will make it work. He had not wanted a divorce in the first place, so Mike was thrilled. And of course, the kids sit in the back seat were so excited. We bought a house and we remarried on June 9th, 1996. We began the work. We made a new commitment to each other and to our children and to God. About a month before our wedding, we were at a fundraiser for the fire department in Delavan. We were sitting across from some people we didn't know. And we were telling the woman that we were going to get remarried. And she asked me when, and I said June 9th. And she asked Mike, and he said June 9th. And she said, how amazing you would pick the same days to get remarried. And we said, no, we're getting married to each other. We have always found such joy in sharing how God has restored me and our marriage and our family. By now, Sarah has a 5-year-old son. Her health is not improving. In 2005, she received a double organ transplant at UW-Madison. It was a wonderful time and it was a difficult time. I didn't know where to be. Should I be in Madison? Should I be home with my kids? Kyle's a senior, is going to graduate high school, and Megan's going to graduate 8th grade, Delvin Christian School. I didn't know which one. But I knew that wherever I was, there was coverage for the other spots. And I rested with that. One particular night, driving home from the hospital, late, dark, raining, and I'm feeling really afraid. And again, I heard Jesus speak to me. And he said, Patty, just look at the light ahead of you. Just follow that light. It doesn't matter what's down the road in the dark. It doesn't matter what's on the sides. Just follow that light. And the more you move, the more the light will too. Just follow the light. I got home great. After the transplant, Sarah's health improved and her faith grew. She is still one of the most loving Jesus kind of person I have ever known. So now we're loving Jesus, we're trusting God, and we're continuing to strengthen our family. Of course, there were tough times and situations. We made many mistakes. But we have always known that this reunion was God-inspired, and that's what we strive to honor. We often refer to a book, what if God made marriage to make you holy more than to make you happy? And the more we followed that book and the more we followed God, the happy just came naturally. 6 months after Zachary graduated high school, tragedy. On February 9th, 2017, while I was laying holding my sweet daughter Sarah at the age of 38, she died. And I always knew that aside from a miracle, that my caregiving for her was not until she recovered, but until she met Jesus face to face. I thought I was prepared. I was wrong. I became depressed and angry at God and angry at the world, and I crawled back into that hole. The grief was so raw that my body hurt. and I felt like my faith had fallen through the hole in my heart. I didn't expect I'd ever smile again. I left my church, and I left my women's group. It was so painful in my women's group to hear them talking about their daughters and going to college and getting married and having babies, and I resented them. Through and through, I resented them. I could not fathom how the world could still just go on like before. Nearly 3 years has passed, and I'm tired of being dark and lonely and angry and sad. And Jesus, again, in his loving kindness, had been waiting and continuing to invite me to take his hand and hold on and trust him. And just like the time so many years ago in the hospital, I did. He again gave me the faith I needed even to trust. Mike and I began to visit different churches, and eventually we came to the river. Although I cried week after week after week after week, I felt his comfort, and I felt his peace that passes understanding. And I also felt the love of Jesus through this small but mighty band of believers. I knew we had found our new church, and Mike said it was the first time he'd seen me smile in a very long time. Then my sister Kathy, she'd been acting kind of weird. She'd been doing some weird stuff. Something's wrong. Something's not right. Something's not right with my dear sister. She was ultimately diagnosed with behavioral variant frontal lobe dementia. This disease robs you of your very being and the essence of who you are. Your behaviors and your personality change. It is often referred to as the cruelest disease you've never heard of. And it's typically about 1 in 10,000 that receive this diagnosis. And again, outside of a miracle, we knew that caring for her and helping her was not to restore her to health, but until she also met Jesus face to face. And she did that this year when she died in January. My grief was back. But this time, I chose to not let go. It made a world of difference. Now, today, I find myself in another life situation that's not great. My husband has also been given the diagnosis of behavioral variant frontal lobe dementia. But Jesus is with us, and he's sticking through this in amazing and tangible ways. I had been encouraged by a mutual friend to go and talk to a small group of people from an area church about some possible financial assistance for Mike's care. And I didn't want to go for a while, and then I felt prompted, so I went. And I met these folks, and I explained the situation. And as I'm telling these 3 people, one of the gentlemen says to me, "I know your husband. Many years ago, when this particular church went on a hiking, backpacking trip to Wyoming, Mike had gone along. Mike loves godly men. He loves to be involved with godly men. He loves to support godly men. It doesn't matter what the church, it doesn't matter. So he went on this trip. And not only this man told me, was he with Mike on this trip, he was his tent mate. And he brings up his phone and he shows me pictures of that trip. God moves in unexpected ways. They filled that financial deficit. So today, I know, again, that without the Lord's will for healing, I will be caring for and helping my wonderful, godly husband until he too goes home. Of course, there's times I'm sad. And of course, there's times I'm so lonely. But I am not alone. I don't feel alone. I have learned a lot of things through this. I have learned to live with ambiguous grief. I have learned to accept that I'm a member of several clubs I never wanted to join. And I have learned from where my help comes. And I have learned that God is always still God in the good times and in the really bad times. And I am continuing to learn to trust and to know thy will be done. I live with one simple prayer now. Lord, grant me the faith I need to keep trusting you. Allow me to never find a deep, dark hole again. And he has. And he does. Because Jesus is all about restoration. And Jesus is all about love. He will never not want you. He will never not love you. And you are never beyond his reach. If you get a chance today, look up 2 Corinthians 1, verse 3 and 4. Thanks.
I mean, really, is there a more beautiful woman? Oh, my goodness. Why does this happen every single time I come up here so strong? I'm blessed to be in a small group with Patty, and the love that she shares in that group is very inspirational. And we have walked through some of these seasons in life with her, and just seeing how she turns to Jesus for all of it, and how she looks to bless other people through it is beautiful. And it is a great testimony to the love of God in her life. And it is a beautiful segue as we talk about coming to the table to receive communion. None of this would be possible. The hope that Patty has would not be possible if it weren't for Jesus. And I am so thankful that our teens are able to sit and receive these stories. The church that I grew up in had, older generations. I joke that the basement smells like a perpetual potluck. The cinder blocks are just full of every salad and hot beef and every imaginable thing. I was there about a year ago for my uncle's funeral, and I'm like, oh man, it's the same basement filled with the same love. And I just am so grateful that our teens have different age groups to learn from, because there are life lessons that you don't know until you know. And they're teaching us things too, us older people, so I am grateful for them. But when we think about communion, it is a time to truly quiet our heart and to just lay down what it is that we're carrying at the feet of Jesus, and to remember that it is his body sacrificed for us, his blood sacrificed for us. And when I think about communion, I think about the fact that Jesus extended it to everyone at the table. He knew who would betray him, he knew who would turn from him, and communion was for everyone. And so if you're feeling like, oh, this isn't for me, I've done too much, I assure you, you have not. It is the same Jesus for all of us. And so I just ask that you bow your heads and you pray with me. Lord Jesus, we just come before you this morning. And we are so grateful that there is not one thing that has happened in our lives that has escaped your awareness. I think of what Patty said, that you were waiting for her with an arm and a hand outstretched to receive her, to hold on to her. And that is what you do for us every single day. Your mercies, your grace are new every day. And while we will never understand the burden that you carried to that cross, we know that you came out of that grave light and free. And that is what you extend to us. So we just quiet our hearts before you. We remember that it is your body and your blood broken and shed on our behalf so that we can receive the freedom and the fullness of life that you have for us.